Judge Barrett, under federal law, is it illegal to intimidate voters at the polls?
I can't answer questions like that.
We're talking about the entire foundation of our democracy here. For centuries, Americans have fought and died to protect the right to vote. And so what matters is not just what you say about its being fundamental, it's what you do. States like South Carolina, Texas, North Carolina, Louisiana, Tennessee have policies that make it harder for people to vote. And it's a real-world thing before the Supreme Court. In fact, back in May, when voters in Wisconsin were standing in line in the middle of a pandemic, in homemade masks, in garbage bags, in the middle of a rainstorm, just to exercise their right to vote, 70 of them got COVID, because we didn't know enough about it back then, because the president hadn't told us what he knew, and we didn't know enough to protect those voters. So it ends up at the Supreme Court. What did Justice Ginsburg do? When the Republican-appointed majority on the court ruled that voters in Wisconsin could not have more time to get their ballots in during the pandemic, she called them out in her dissent, in her blueprint for the future, and she said the majority opinion boggled the mind. So what boggles my mind? Well, 2 weeks ago, the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated the South Carolina requirement that mail-in ballots must have witness signatures. In the middle of a pandemic, you got to go and get a witness. In Texas, Republicans have argued that the pandemic wasn't a good enough reason to let people under age 65 vote by mail, despite the fact that over 42,000 Americans under 65 have died from COVID. And the governor right now is forcing that state to have only one ballot box per county, including in Harris County, where there are 4.7 million people. And for those of you that thought a judge took care of it a few days ago, he did. But then yesterday, 3 Trump-appointed judges came in and reversed that. So we're back to one ballot box for people to drop their ballots off in a county of 4.7 million people. In Tennessee, Republicans have tried to prevent ballot drop boxes. I know we had the Secretary of State as one of our witnesses at a Rules Committee hearing, and they have argued in court that COVID-19 is not a valid excuse to vote by mail. In North Carolina, the Supreme Court struck down a core component of the Voting Rights Act. What happened? Well, states like North Carolina passed laws that were so egregious to make it harder to vote that the Fourth Circuit struck down their law and noted that it targeted African Americans with almost surgical precision. So that is what the stakes are. And that is why not having Justice Ginsburg on the court right now is so frightening to so many Americans out there. And that is why we are asking you these questions about voting. Last week, a contractor from outside of my state of Minnesota started recruiting poll watchers with special forces experience to protect polling locations in my state. This was clear voter intimidation. Similar efforts are going on around the country, solicited by President Trump's false claims of massive voter fraud, something that, by the way, many Republican leaders, including Michael Steele, the former head of the Republican Party, including Tom Ridge, including Governor Kasich, including sitting Senator Romney, have made very clear is not true. So as a result of his claims, people are trying to get poll watchers, special forces people, to go to the polls. Judge Barrett, under federal law, is it illegal to intimidate voters at the polls?
Senator Klobuchar, I can't characterize the facts in a hypothetical situation, and I can't apply the law to a hypothetical set of facts. I can only decide cases as they come to me, litigated by parties on a full record after fully engaging precedent, talking to colleagues, writing an opinion. And so I can't answer questions like that.
Okay, well, I'll make it easier. 18 U.S.C. 594 outlaws anyone who intimidates, threatens, coerces, or attempts to intimidate, threaten, or coerce any other person for the purpose of interfering with the right of such other person to vote. This is a law that has been on the books for decades. Do you think a reasonable person would feel intimidated by the presence of armed civilian groups at the polls?
Senator Klobuchar, that is eliciting, I'm not sure whether to say it's eliciting a legal opinion from me, because the reasonable person standard, as you know, is one common in the law, or just an opinion as a citizen, but it's not something really that's appropriate for me to comment on.